On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, SGA gets ready to face Wembanyama in the Olympics and your mailbag questions.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and inside the Thunder beat writer, Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at Hello ThunderPod. Check out Sports Illustrated for all your Thunder needs. We have a great team over there talking about the Thunder year-round, as we do on this show, which you can subscribe to anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. We're here for you every morning. Check out Locked On Sooners, Locked On Pokes, who are in season. The pads are popping, so you can go see how they're doing ahead of the regular season of college football in fall camp right now. A lot to dive into with those sports. Not so much to dive into in the NBA, though the Olympics have helped extend the life of the NBA season to this point. We won't really hit the dog days until, August 13th, I think will be the first day where you look around and say, eesh, there really is nothing here to talk about. But luckily, once you hit August 13th, you're just a hop, skip, and a jump. I would argue just a hop and skip. No jump this year. You have evaded jumping this year. You're just hopping and skipping your way to media day, to training camp. Of course, every year there will be the pseudo secret runs of NBA teams getting together a couple days or weeks before the NBA season. Those videos will leak out. That will satisfy the itch for a little bit. Once training camp's here, you're just days away from preseason, which, unlike the NFL, like in the NBA, is extremely close to the regular season. Of course, you're going to see starters probably not playing in the second half, and the fourth quarters get a bit wonky. But in general, basketball is basketball, and you're talking more so about guys who are going to make an impact in some way. So, like whenever you feed a guy like Jay Will, 25 minutes in the preseason, is he going to get that allotment in the regular season? Doesn't project to, but he does project to impact the game in some way. So really in the NBA, you just have to get from the finals to the preseason, and then you're kind of back, and everything's back in the flow of things, and you're racing toward another 82-game marathon. So luckily this year, you're going to miss out on some of the dog day stuff, but there will be a little bit of it. Again, a hop and a skip is still in there until we get to training camp and all that. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Thunder to see what we come up with. I started doing on Styles Points, which I do on Sports Illustrated Thunder, a review of Elvis movies, because I projected about 30 days here before we get back to normal, and there's 31 Elvis movies. Now, I did cut out one Elvis movie that I'm not going to review, and if I want to accomplish this, I have to watch like 8 more movies, I think, and then I'm done with the collection. So we'll see if I can do that in time, because these are hard to find movies, folks. They're hard to find out there, surprisingly enough. So maybe I'll do something like that here. I won't really force feed the Elvis reviews on the pod, but you can go read them on SI Thunder. As long as the bosses don't pull that, because I wouldn't blame them if they did, because that is a haphazard review. Now, looking up at this week, this is still going to be a fun week of basketball with that diatribe aside. SGA will take on Victor Wembanyama in the Olympic quarterfinals today, here at lunchtime, about 11:30 Central Time, on the Peacock app. We're gonna recap that on the show tomorrow, and we're gonna recap how he did versus Wemby, him and Dort, if they moved on, what the bracket will look like for them moving forward, should they have won. As right now, they're expected to win. They're 7.5-point favorites, according to our good friends over at FanDuel, to get that win. So we'll see how that unfolds. What I think is the important part here is it's another opportunity for a guy like Shai to perform on the biggest stage that he's had to this point against an NBA phenom who can, walk onto the court and have 1 million views put on that video, How he does in this game is going to be interesting, especially whenever you go up against the likes of Wemby and Gobert with no 3-second rule. What does that do for his driving ability? What does that do for his mid-range ability? What does that look like against France? Now, I don't think that he'll struggle, especially not that much, because he's one of the best players in the world for a reason, but it still will be interesting to see, as there's a lot of pressure on this 3-0 Canada squad. Like, you've seen the bracket set up where you're going to play Wembanyama in France. Then, if you win, you'll get the winner of Germany against Greece, and Germany's been a very tough team these last couple of years in the sense of dating back to the FIBA World Cup, which they were dominant in. You've already played Greece, but of course, if you go up against, Giannis Antetokounmpo, all bets are off. Anytime you play that guy, he's so good. Just to get to, of course, a medal. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that works out. The good news is you did fall on the wrong side of, or on the opposite side of the United States. So the correct side of the bracket if you want to go for gold. But I think that any medal, bronze, silver, gold, will be huge for Team Canada. And you do that by winning against France. Like, I think that this will be the toughest team standing in their way of getting one of the medals. Because once you clear this, this is a win or go home. Once you clear this, if you lose, you go to the third place game, which I think that Canada will discard any team in the third place game. And then, of course, if you're in the gold game, well, then you can just either win gold or silver. And you have to go through the powerhouse of USA to do so, which they've already played once in exhibition. Got off to a really good start against them in exhibition play, but couldn't quite get over that hump and beat them in the end. Which I think, if we're being honest, you can have your rooting interests in Shea and Dort. The most likely outcome, of course, is the USA winning gold. So if you finish short of the USA, there's no harm in that. But you can really make yourself, a success story just with this win over Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert. I think that that's a testament to how much basketball has kind of grown as a sport in general, that, separating you and stopping you from medaling could be who's widely considered the next up of the best player in the league in Wembanyama, and a 50-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner in Rudy Gobert. But it's going to be just great to see them play and duke it out. Another tidbit of news, it came out from the Sports Business Journal over the weekend that Bally Sports is considering axing 5 NBA teams, among them the Oklahoma City Thunder. The writing seems as though it's been on the wall with the Bally situation for a long time. I think it's why you saw the NBA allow these teams to have a trial run of over-the-air games last spring. The Thunder chose to do that with KSBI and have it where it's accessible to more people in Oklahoma, as long as you have basic cable or an antenna, which I get. Some of you might not have antennas, and you say, well, it's actually more convenient for me to just sign up to Bally Sports Plus every month and get the Thunder. But I think that if you kind of reshape that, let's say that they go down that route, the one-time fee of the antenna and getting that set up, which is easy to do in the modern era, getting that set up, in the long run, you save, yes, it's something you have to buy right now, but you save more money than the monthly subscription of like $20 a month to Bally, which I inevitably pay as well. And so that would be a positive thing. We don't really know enough right now of what the next course of action will be. Again, I think that, if you were paying attention last year, the writing was on the wall for this to likely be the outcome of no more Bally games starting this season. That's not been made official, though. We don't quite know where things will stand. I imagine that all parties want this resolved sooner rather than later. One thing that I think is of note, I wouldn't worry about this in the sense of your broadcast. Like, now, your destination, of course, will change. You will not get it from Bally anymore should this go through. But I do think that your broadcast will be very familiar. It'll still be Fisher, Cage, Paris, Nick. It'll still be those collection of talent as they're employed by the team and not Bally. So I wouldn't worry too much about the cast and the crew changing on air. It's just going to be a matter, I think, of where do you go to get it at this point, which I would have to imagine, as this stuff leaks out, isn't going to be Bally's, but that's still up in the air. That's still yet to be decided. It's just that they're looking at it. And once you start looking at ditching NBA teams, I think it's going to be something that happens, especially as we saw the course of action that the sides took last year of taking back some of those games and redistributed them elsewhere to give it a trial run. We've already seen some teams, ditch their typical like broadcast. Like, of course, the Astros and Rockets were on Root Sports, which turned into AT&T something or another. They collapsed, and then The Rockets and Astros came together and built their own network. The Jazz have built their own network. The Suns have built their own network. So this is kind of going to be where things are trending, I think, for NBA teams to just kind of build their own stuff internally. But we'll see it get implemented and see how it goes moving forward. It's just that it was interesting to get that kind of concrete report from someone as prestigious, of course, as the Sports Business Journal about Bally and them looking at ditching teams. If I had to guess, that's how things will go, and you'll be looking at a new TV home for the Thunder this season. But we're not quite there just yet. It's just something to keep an eye on moving forward. Coming up, let's talk your mailbag questions and more. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at eBay Motors. Check them out today because eBay Motors understands that patience, drive, and passion, that's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. So no matter if you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for with eBay Guaranteed Fit. It's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back because eBay Motors, you'll be burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts and the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home a huge win with eBay Motors. eBay Motors, ride or die alive, ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, available to U.S. customers. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Also on Threads, same handle at Rylan_Stiles. Don't really know what I'm doing over there, but we're going to try it out. Why not experiment with another social platform, as if I'm not on social media enough. Subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts from, including on YouTube. Thank you so much for making us your first listen, but we are the Locked On Podcast Network. You can check out Locked On Sooners, check out Locked On Pokes, as they are in fall camp. The pads are popping. The media is out there practice. They're getting sound bites. They're getting news. They're getting tidbits. They're getting camp info. They're getting you ready for the football season, and you can go check them out today at Locked On Sooners, Locked On Pokes. We also have Locked On SEC, Locked On Big 12, if you want a conference-wide look at things, and also Locked On Sports Today with a huge array of all the breaking news and biggest news around sports with Locked On Sports Today. So we're going to get into your mailbag questions. I think that there's one more piece of news worth bringing up just quickly. According to Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports, it's trending the direction of which Lauri Markkanen will sign his extension with the Jazz, but not only sign it with the Jazz, but sign the extension on Wednesday or later of this week, which would make him ineligible for this year's trade deadline, and thus ineligible to be traded for the whole year. He would not be able to be traded to the offseason. Why is that big for the Thunder? Not because they were ever going to trade for him. You can go back and listen to last week's episode about this topic. They were never going to trade for Lauri Markkanen. It's big for the Thunder because the Thunder own the Jazz's top 10 pick next year. Now, as everyone in Oklahoma City has seen, it is possible to be a bottom 5 pick and a bottom 10 pick especially while boasting an all-star level talent. The Thunder did that en route to Chet Holmgren. But it does open the door for you to be too good too quickly and not be able to bottom out completely and risk falling above that threshold where the Thunder, if that pick falls 11 through 30, the Thunder get that first round selection in a really, really, really good draft from the Utah Jazz. And so had they traded Lauri Markkanen, I would have given you a 0% chance to see the Jazz become a team that does not finish in the bottom 10. But with Lauri Markkanen, that percentage goes up from 0. Now, again, it's still unlikely. The Jazz would still be smart to bottom out for Cooper Flagg and try their hardest to get in that top 5 because this is a draft class loaded with talent and loaded with top-tier talent, even beyond Cooper Flagg. So that your consolation prizes in this draft are really good. But this at least opens the possibility of them kind of messing up that plan. Whereas a Lauri Markkanen trade ends all possibility. So I think that it's good enough news for the pick, although you'd still bank on that pick going back to Utah. But if the Jazz come out of the gates extremely hot and a projected playoff team suffers an injury here, regresses there, who knows what their course of action looks like? Because for the Jazz to come out of the gate hot, that would mean Isaiah Collier's really good. That would mean Cody Williams is really good. Kyle Filipowski's really good. Like, that would mean that your young guys that you've acquired are really good, along with an all-star talent like Lauri Markkanen. And so maybe at that point you talk yourself into the ability to, not bottom out, since it would be predicated on young guys stepping up, along with Jordan Clarkson, along with some of the other guys that you have there in Utah, Colin Sexton. But we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. I think the most likely outcome is still the Jazz finish bottom 10, keep their pick. Your first mailbag question on Twitter at Ryland_Styles at I am not serious AMI. As far as the Olympics go, does it look like Shai has added or improved anything else in his game? Yes. Now, by and large, Shai and Lu Dort look like Shai and Lu Dort. They look the same, they're playing the same, but there's two areas of Shai's game that's really kind of taken hold. Number one is his playmaking increase. Now, you saw the playmaking leap last year, and we talked a lot about his improved playmaking last year. This year, it's as though he's reached another gear in the sense of, like, he's not just making the right passes. He's not just elevating, how he can pass the basketball, but he's understanding more where the next pass will lead, how to create the advantage for his offense, and not just using it as, hey, I've got to be a good enough passer to, when I get cut off my drives, be able to redirect the ball. He's doing it to help the offense rather than, hey, let's reset things. That did not go as planned. That isolation did not go as planned. So that's a massive step forward. I think that's an area where it's a combination of, like, his own personal growth with, kind of what's being asked of him and with what he can project to do next year, with everyone taking a step forward individually, and with the team just getting better, of course, as well. Because regardless of what you think about Caruso and Giddey and them individually, in the construct of this roster, Caruso's a much better option to kick the ball out to and create an advantage to as a passer than Giddey was off the ball. So I think that his passing's huge, and you'll see that show up. An area I don't know if you'll see show up, but I hope you see show up, has been this bravado, this confidence. It's completely intangible. It's hard to quantify. And I don't know how much of it that he'll want to have on display in the NBA. But the whole looking at your bench, sticking your tongue out, getting chippy after the game, the smirking after made buckets, like all this stuff. You saw bits and pieces of it throughout the NBA season this year. But the way he's playing with that edge to him, it looks like a player who just finished top 5 in MVP voting twice and is now dominating the world stage and is now understanding, hey, I'm that guy. Like, I am the best player in the world, one of the best players in the world. And he's playing as such, conducting himself as such, and not afraid to show it, so to say, not feeling as though he's got to, whatever you want to call it, reserve himself and pay his dues or whatever. Again, how much of that is, this is a serious environment. You do want to medal for your team, but it's not as, like, buttoned up. It's a more fun, loose tournament while trying to win for your country, which is vastly important. And how much of this is what we just said, a guy who is now understanding his pecking order in the basketball world, which is near or at the top. So I wonder how much of that does translate over to the NBA. I'm not sure on that. I do think that the passing advantages, and not just being from a necessity, I think will work and will translate to the next level, and to the NBA level. Let's talk about this question from Alex Bowlerjack. What's the worst nickname in sports? Oh, let me think. Anything I was called in 5th grade. Can't say those on the air, though. It's a good question. The worst nickname in sports, in terms of, like, Nicknames that I don't find like interesting would be like baseball nicknames where it's like you just add Y to it. You add Y or O to it. Gordo, Goldie. Like, okay, I mean, yeah, you can make that a nickname, but it's not necessarily a nickname. I don't necessarily love those kind of nicknames. I don't think that they're bad though. I think that they're a little played out. I like the nicknames where like there's a section of a league or a team or a fan base or whatever that calls somebody something that's so out of the blue you can't even initially pick up on the connection. Like I like those kind of nicknames. But I'll say the best nickname in sports, which is not your question, but I like doing best versus worst. Sparky, Nick Gallo, Sparky. I want to say right now about our good friends over at Game Time. Check out Game Time right now. I love Game Time. I think that Game Time is great. I think that Game Time is what you want to listen to and kind of use in your life, because not only do you get last minute prices and the last minute deals, lowest prices guaranteed, and you have flash deals and you have zone deals to make sure you're getting the lowest prices on last minute tickets, but I love the all-in pricing where you see all of the price up front. There's no surprises at checkout. I love that. So I know exactly what I'm going to buy when I go to checkout. I also love the view from your seat. You get a panoramic view of your seat on the app before you buy. You can see the sight lines. You can see what you're near, where you need to be, all that good stuff over there at Game Time. So go download the Game Time app, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, use code LOCKONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Lowest prices, last minute tickets guaranteed, and terms and conditions do apply. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Folks, for your second listen, check out Locked On Sooners, Locked On Pokes, Locked On NBA for all of the great content out there about the general NBA. Today's show with Matt Moore and Tony East, they talked about which team could take down Team USA. I think it would be Canada, if anyone. Go hear what they have to say about the biggest threats to Team USA. At MK325491, as we continue our mailbag podcast, is Cason Wallace the best first option off the bench next season? I think that he could be one of the best backup point guards in the league. This is interesting. I think that you have to give the best backup option to Isaiah Hartenstein only because of what it unlocks for everybody else. So the first thing Isaiah Hartenstein does, he immediately vastly increases your ability to protect the rim. You can now cover a 48-minute game with 48 minutes of rim protection, a feat that you could not pull off a year ago. Then, whenever you put him with that backup unit and you stagger in J-Dub or whoever you want on the ball, Cason Wallace, whoever's on the ball, he is the best screener and advantage creator that you've ever had in last year's bench units. Like he immediately improves that as well. Like if you want to talk about how J-Dub needs to take a step forward as an on-ball player and an on-ball scorer, his life gets easier when you see Hartenstein wiping out screens for him and getting him to the rim. His job gets easier when he can give the ball to Hartenstein as a hub creator in the post, and he's able to redirect it and create an advantage as a passer himself. So he makes life easier offensively for guys. He's able to be lethal in the pick and roll. You can talk about his potential as a jump shooter. I don't think that really matters. I think that if that comes around, great. If not, it does not hurt the Thunder in any way at all. As a matter of fact, like the more threes you take, you could see a correlation in hurting the Thunder. So you might want to see him not go out and improve that three-point shot all that much. So I think that it would be hard-pressed not to give this to Hartenstein because he makes life easier. If you're wanting Cason Wallace to take that on-ball leap as a playmaker, tap back into his point guard roots, well, to do that, I think that any young guard needs a quality big and a big who's been around the block a time or two to really take them under their wing, both literally on the court and figuratively, and work with them and become a safety net for them, which Hartenstein can do for Wallace on the ball, because you didn't get to, develop his on-ball presence last year. Like Marcus talked about how invaluable he was to that Thunder team, to where he didn't play for the Blue and get a billion on-ball minutes. He didn't get NBA minutes on the ball because the minutes were too costly. Like, you needed them to win games, so you had to use him in that role of 3 and D pretty much to help you win basketball games and help you get the #1 overall seed in the West. And so this year, he will have a massive learning curve if this is how the Thunder want to use him. And I think Isaiah Hartenstein helps him moving forward. I think we can get too narrow-minded of like, oh, Hartenstein is just here to help Chet. Like, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that he's here to supplement Chet, where the drop-off from Chet to the second big is not as dramatic as it was going to a 6'9" guy. But I think he actually helps. If you want to get to the terminology of help, he actually helps a lot more people, before he directly helps Chet in that way. And of course, he will help Chet too, because now you can run some double bigs as needed. Again, they only did that 2% of the time last year, but that 2% that they did it worked really well. So we'll see what they want to do. But I think that like the best option off the bench will be Hartenstein because of all the options that he has, and especially as he helps J-Dub kind of become a better player whenever he's running the show. LRB Witchery. Should Caruso or Hartenstein or both or neither start? I foresee both of them inevitably closers most of the time. I Hart more dependent on matchup. So I think that Caruso should start. And I think it should be as simple as, Caruso for Giddey, and you kind of just do everything that way. Like, everything is the Caruso Giddey swap foundationally, both in the starting lineup, both in how you stagger minutes. Because remember last year, they left Shea and Dort on the court for the whole first quarter. More often than not, those two guys played the whole first quarter. It was the other three guys who came out. Then in the second quarter and the third quarter, the second quarter and the start of the fourth quarter, you start with the three guys back on the floor with a couple bench guys. So what I would do, if I was Mark, I'd have those three guys come off the bench because, come into the starting lineup and come off the bench in the second quarter, because Caruso can replace some of that playmaking from Giddey. Ultimately, you still want J-Dub to be the main creator. You now have, Chet and Hartenstein ping-ponging back and forth in the middle to where you never have a lapse in your front court, which we just talked about. And then you can just pick your poison. Do you want Kaysen? Do you want Wiggins? Do you want Joe? Like, who do you want with them? They are then chameleons because they can just fit with whatever combination of bench guys that are ready to play. Those three guys in this case would be Caruso, Dub, and Chet. They can fit with any combination of the bench guys. So I think that's why you would start Caruso. I don't think that you'd start Hartenstein because you're not going to bench Chet, obviously. And starting them both together really kind of negates the purpose of signing Hartenstein, because now you're back to square one with your backup bigs, J. Will. And while J. Will, I think, is a good player, I think he's a better player than he gets credit for. The bottom line is the rim protection aspect of things, while improved last year, still weren't good enough and don't project to be good enough on his own. I think where you're going to see a big uptick from J. Will is, you look how good he played next to Chet. He'll play that good next to Hartenstein as well. And when he's alone, it'll be as the third big, not the second big, which inevitably is less time alone. So I think that you'll see him make a stride this year, but it won't be because he's playing the same role he played last year. And if you start both Hartenstein and Holmgren, two guys that are bigs, didn't play 30 minutes last year, they're going to need these breaks. You lose all of what you just gained from signing Hartenstein. So I think that you only start one. It'll be Caruso. And the reason that you go Dort and Caruso together would be because you'd much rather stagger and have Caruso, again, in place of Giddey in every way, because you don't want more playmaking. You don't want more offensive responsibility on Dort. You're very comfortable having that responsibility on Caruso. MK_product82. They say, who is the most likely to be traded next from the Thunder? So which Thunder player is most likely to be traded next? Well, let's go through it. Shea, absolutely not. Hartenstein, absolutely not. Because I think that you see with Hartenstein, you saw last year, this Thunder team wants as much information as possible. You've signed Hartenstein to a 3-year contract, and it can be 2 years minimum, but a 3-year contract. They're not going to just move on from him by the deadline. So I think that they're going to want to see this in totality of a regular season, of a postseason minimum. So there you go. Lu Dort, I don't think so. I wouldn't say absolutely not, but I really don't think so. I think that this organization values him so much, and they value what he can do, especially with this group, that he becomes a no for me. Isaiah Joe, no. Chet, no. Wiggins, no. But I'm very curious about Aaron Wiggins, because I think that you left a lot of last season, at least we did in this podcast, you left a lot of last season wondering, why aren't they playing Wiggins even more? Like, why aren't they playing him even more? Well, now he's got the long-term contract. He's locked into another bargain contract. You got to start playing him. And if you don't play him a ton, what does that mean? What does that look like, right, for the future? But I'm going to say no for Wiggins. I'm going to say no for Caruso. Kenrich, he's on the table. I think that if for the sake of this question, you'd have to consider him. Wallace, no. Jang would be on the table in a kind of Trey Mann type of trade. Topic, I don't think so within the course of the regular season. I think it could be an off-season situation, if anything, because I do think that they do value Topic. J-Dub, heck no. Dylan Jones, no. J-Will, I could see it in a way, but I don't think so. Lucas, Flagler, Mitchell, no. I think that the next one to get traded, if anyone, would be Kenrich and Oos for like a hey, we want to fill this roster spot with somebody. Oos isn't there yet, but maybe for you guys he'd pan out. Look what happened to Trey Mann. Here's a sweetener in Kenrich, who's a solid veteran. But ultimately, again, this is not going to turn out this way. But if you've heard our conversation with Joel Lorenzi last Friday, this is nearly a perfect team on paper. And that sounds hilarious to say, because you can never build a perfect team. But what would be the trade? What would be the move that you make? What would be what you want them to go do? Because right now on paper, there's very, 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 very little holes, and none of them evident. None of them look as though they're gonna sink the ship. Whereas last year, you could worry at this time last year about the big man size and the rebounding and everything else. What are you just fretting over right now that could just end things? We won't know until closer to the deadline. But I think that even once you get to the deadline, if there is something that popped up that you want them to address, it would take, Oos and picks, or Oos and Kenrich, and you kind of move on from there. I throw Kenrich in there because he's older. He's still on a quality contract that could get you a quality veteran, though. And it was very intriguing that they did not play him at all in the Dallas series, even though in the one game that they put him in there, after teasing all series that they could put him in there, he did turn the game around. They didn't go back to him. That was perplexing. So, in combination with, he looked a little sluggish down the stretch of last year, in combination with, they didn't play him much. So I would put Kenrich and Oos on that list. But again, I don't think that they're going to make a big trade. Like, I don't think that there's anything right now that would just be glaring enough to where you'd want to do that. We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to save some of these for part 2 tomorrow after we recap Shea and Wemby. So another question that we had was from In Chet We Trust, my favorite question of the day. In Chet We Trust says, if the defensive 3-second was removed, would it help or hurt the Thunder? And I think that your brain immediately goes to help, because you have Chet, this elite rim protector. If he just got the camp down there, he could swat every shot imaginable. And then you flip it. Well, if the other team just got the camp at the paint all day long, 24/7, what would happen to this drive-heavy offense? And so it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg. Do you think that the Thunder could scheme up a way to, of course, as they have before with J-Dub and Shea, kill you in the mid-range? Like, we know those guys will kill you in the mid-range. That then draws out the big just a little bit from the rim, and now you can kill them with your cuts and your savvy cutters that you have and dump-off passers that you have. And thus, maintaining that level of offense while gaining the benefit of Chet at the rim, swatting away every single shot? Or do teams get stubborn? Do they pack the paint with no 3-second? And sort of every team at that point becomes a little bit like last year's Lakers team, who could really pack the inside the arc area where they would suffocate you in the mid-range and then funnel you inside the AD at the paint, and then rely on their length to get out to the three-point line and knock out your drive and kick shooters. Ultimately, it's tough to mess with anything that ain't broken, but if I had to pick if it would help or hurt the Thunder, I would say it would hurt them just for the unknown. Because we know that Chet can be a very impactful, very elite shot blocker without the benefit of no 3-second. And he's the only guy who could really benefit from no 3-second on this whole roster. Whereas without 3-second, who would be hurt by it, potentially all your top guys would be hurt by it on offense. So that's why I go with hurt, the way the Thunder are currently constructed. Because you just got to, as your name says, trust in Chet to still get blocks and still protect the rim, even with the current rules that apply. But it is interesting to see. And I think that theory can get tested a bit in today's game against Wembanyama, Fournier, and Team Canada as they play Wemby and Gobert in a matter of hours. So we'll be back to recap all that, plus answer any questions we missed, which means you have additional time to go to Twitter at Rylan_Styles or on YouTube in the comments and leave questions yourself. So until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.